I was given the scene photos, the reports generated by the medical examiner, sheriff's department, police department, witness interviews. It didn't make sense. The report generated by the biomechanics expert, Dr. Gomez, had Max going over the banister when his center of gravity was way too low. And then the pattern of injuries on his body didn't match the report from the biomechanics expert. There were several things at the scene that stand out. One of them is that the carpeting on the second story is thick pile carpeting. And the scenario as proposed by the police department was that Max was going at a high rate of speed on his razor scooter, and that's how he somehow propelled himself over the banister. The problem is that anybody who's ridden a scooter would know that you can't go at a high rate of speed on thick pile carpeting. The marks on Max's body don't support the theory that he accidentally fell off the banister. Number one, there's a pattern of abrasion on his back that if you were to hold him upright would be shaped like a number 7. The top of the 7 would correspond to the top of the banister if he was standing against the banister backing into it. His center of gravity would be too low to go over. Other marks on his body don't match the scenario that was proposed by the police department. The police department scenario has Max grabbing onto the chandelier as he swings across the room and then sliding down the opposite banister. So why doesn't he have any abrasions on his hands or cuts on his hand? What I see on Max is too much injury to be accounted for by an accidental scenario, and they can't be explained by this scene without some sort of other person involvement. That would make it a homicide. The most likely scenario is that Max was doing something on the second floor, and Rebecca tried to discipline him or warn him, and in the process lifted him up enough so he could go over the banister, not intending to kill him. Rebecca's story doesn't add up. It didn't add up that she couldn't remember whether he was face up or face down and whether she moved him. It didn't add up that she initially told police that she didn't know where he fell from. There are multiple scenarios that could explain her involvement without it being an intentional death. I believe the police need to look at this case more carefully because of the inconsistencies between the scenarios and the injuries on the body. My heart breaks for Rebecca's family. I don't want any of my opinions to mar their memory and their love for her.
So you believe Max was lifted over that railing?
The biomechanics indicate that there's no other way for him to go over the railing, especially if he already backs into it. He would just collapse down. His center of gravity is too low.
So someone then lifted him over. Was that Rebecca Zahau?
I believe she had a direct involvement, knowledge of or participation in.
And Dr. Melinek, you said, and I quote, Rebecca witnessed it or saw it and she wasn't forthcoming with information.
There were inconsistencies in her statement. Number one, she initially told the police that she hadn't seen Max fall. And yet later in the day, she told Dina's sister that he fell from the second story balcony. So she knew this. Second inconsistency has to do with the fact that she said that the child said Ocean, which is the name of the dog, as if to deflect attention, like the dog was somehow involved. Max could not have said much of anything. I think he was immediately unconscious. So there are major inconsistencies and problems in her statements that implicate her. But there's nothing on the body to suggest she intentionally did anything to Max. There are injuries, there are multiple planes of injuries, but I can't say for certain that this was murder as opposed to an involuntary manslaughter.